Everybody, welcome to the XR Marketing Director Incubator, the program that helps you better career conversations and make great career decisions. My name is Mike Dixon. I lead the sales and marketing division of XR Recruitment and Search. This morning, I'm delighted to be joined by Derek Oliver, Marketing Director at Blackmores. Welcome, Derek.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone.
Great to have you. Now, we're going to showcase Derek's career from traditional FMCG marketing with P&G and Coty to his career in liquor with Pernod and Diageo, and more recently with Blackmores. We're going to find out his approach to big decisions and the advice he'd give you about building your narrative and ensuring you get the most out of your career. Now, as always, given the number of people on the call today, everyone's muted, but we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. So please be as active as you want on the chat, and we'll get to those questions as we go, or we've got time at the end to answer anything that we think is too tricky. So let's get into it. So we look back on a pretty extraordinary year for everybody this year, and you left Pernod after 10 successful years, just as COVID was hitting sort of February, March time, and kind of had a number of months navigating your way through to a new role while everything was just imploding. First of all, how did you cope?
Yeah, Mike, look, like a lot of people would be pretty honest to say that 2020 has been challenging from both a personal perspective and a professional perspective. But I have to say, from the positive side, there are elements of this year which have been really enjoyable. So the opportunity to recharge the batteries, and again, that's one bit of advice I would say, that recharging the batteries and finding the time to do that has been immensely rewarding. And that includes obviously prioritizing important things in your life, which through a unbroken career of 17 years that you sometimes forget, such as family and kids. So that's been immensely rewarding. It just helps prioritize and helps you think about things differently. And then from a professional sense, the opportunity just to, I think when you're intensely in a role in a company as long as I was, and obviously you get to know it like the back of your hand, and very much across all aspects of it, you sometimes forget the world moves at a more dynamic pace outside of that. So to take the time and to build the knowledge base and appreciate that that the world is full of opportunities, not just from a career perspective, but from a business perspective as well, and to build that network and to take the time to meet new people and understand new sectors and do different things has been immensely rewarding from that capacity as well. But yeah, 2020 has been a challenge, nevertheless.
Yeah, and for you and for a lot of us, it was about how do we we had more time. So what do we do? How do we do we go to new sports and new hobbies? Did you take up anything or focus on anything in particular that you weren't doing before?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I won't throw you under the bus. I might. Obviously, you're on the golf course yesterday, not with me.
Yeah.
But look, I'm a terrible golfer, but I think getting out on the golf course this year and just taking the opportunity just to enjoy the fresh air and again taking that mental break has been again a real positive. So family, a bit of golf in between, and I think the piece around just meeting new people, getting the time to read up and build that knowledge base is just that's I've been able to read the AFR every morning, play golf, connect with people, and I think that's been really a positive. Being able to do more school drop-offs and pickups as well, which has been immensely rewarding too.
Yeah, great. Well, I'll get you out on the golf course. and I'm always interested because you're one of a smallish group of people who started a new role during COVID. What was that kind of onboarding experience like?
Yeah, look, it's interesting, and I've been asked this question numerous times, to be honest, and it's one of those things where I haven't had to onboard for 10 years. When I onboarded at Pernod Ricard, I knew the sector quite well in terms of alcohol and drinks. Even some of the people at Pernod Ricard had used through connections from my Diageo days as well. So the onboarding was relatively straightforward, even though I was moving back from London to Sydney, but so onboarding for the first time in 10 years was a new experience, but onboarding during this year in a virtual world, and that's the key point. It's it's been eye-opening, to be honest, in terms of and look, everyone's obviously moved into a virtual world, so it's not like it's completely new for everyone. But yeah, I think the onboarding piece in the virtual world and that human connection is probably been the bit that you just have to adjust to. I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm quite a person who likes the human interactions of dialogue and banter, as well as obviously the more sort of functional discussions and professional discussions. But so doing that in a virtual world has obviously been the big new thing.
Yeah, some of the sales guys I've been meeting on the sales director incubator, I remember Nick Dawes was on from Ferrero maybe 3 or 4 sessions ago, and he only met half his team.
Yeah,
so I wasn't met.
Yeah, well, it took me at least 4 or 5 weeks to meet half my team in person. So yeah,
it's strange days, but I think we're we're getting there.
Yeah.
But now you getting into your career, you graduated with a commerce degree from Deakin. Did you have a kind of clear thought or plan to get into marketing when you graduated?
Absolutely not. I did marketing major and a sport management major. I always had a passion, and I still do, for sport. But I quickly realised, and I spent a year in the US as part of that degree as well, as part of the sport management major, and I quickly understood that the scope of roles, the breadth of income in sport management was pretty limited. So, to be honest, I've always been pretty good with numbers. So I always thought the finance or the consulting route was probably more likely. But I literally just fell into marketing. People go, you're one of the very few people who have a commerce marketing degree who actually got into marketing. Same with a degree that's along the same pathway, but absolutely not. That wasn't the original thought. No.
Right, and and then look forward at I guess the things that you've done. We've discussed at several points in this program McKinsey's T career, where McKinsey use it as a model to assess potential in leaders, and they look for people who've got strong functional specialization, which is the vertical line of the T. And then they look for experiential breadth, which is the kind of horizontal line. And that breadth comes from a number of different spaces. And part of this program is actually to demonstrate that you can build that T career in a number of different ways. Now you've kind of worked in 5 different companies. You spent a significant part of your early career working in the UK. You've worked in domestic and global marketing as well. If you had to do your time again, are there additional experiences that you have added, or you, when you look forward, are there kind of parts of the business or experiences you look forward to adding going forward?
It's an interesting question. I probably don't appreciate the breadth of organizations and roles that I've been in that probably create that narrative, to be honest. And when you pose that question to me, I sit down and think, the biggest learning, and it's probably just maybe the way I operate, is the fact that I've been able to work for 5 different companies, such as B&G, Coty, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, and now obviously Blackmores is much newer, and my time is it's only very new. But I think one of the big learning parts is, especially if you've got aspirations and ambitions to get into leadership roles, is to process and think about the different business models and the different leadership styles and leadership models, and how those businesses operate. Because for me, that creates a breadth of knowledge and learning. So yeah, breadth of organizations help. And then obviously global, local marketing roles, and working in different regions gives you that cultural nuance, which I think obviously helps as well. In terms of, I think the move into a new category for me now is probably the answer to your question.
Yeah.
I've been in alcohol drinks for the last 13 years. I was in fragrances for 5 years before that. So moving into a category that, again, is highly regulated, but again, it's a new category for me. So there's a lot of learning in terms of product learning. And again, that should hopefully, again, I'm a big believer when it comes to, that when you talk about the McKinsey sort of model, the thing that I think is key there in terms of leadership and getting to that next level is really learning agility. So, you know, yes, the T model, but that learning agility comes up whether it's a vertical or horizontal steps that you're making. Is that ability for people to demonstrate learning agility, leadership competencies around leading people, but also self-awareness, that type of stuff. So, yeah, I think, I think the thing for me to answer your question is actually the move that I've made recently to be very open to moving into a different sector.
Yeah, and it can be tough to do, I think, sometimes. And I do talk a lot about generating breadth in your career, but we can get a little narrow-minded sometimes in when it comes to recruitment. I think we often recruit quite safely.
Yes.
And we like people who talk the same language, understand our world, our function or our category.
Yeah.
And often if I present a left field candidate in a shortlist, whilst that might raise eyebrows and create some interest, rarely does that person get recruited.
Yeah.
It's often, well, actually, we know this person. They're we talk to say customers, or we understand the category dynamics. We recruit that person quite safely. Yeah. So, but I think it's changing, and because there's a value in breadth, and I think because breadth can drive learning agility because it forces you to think beyond the safe world that you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and again, I probably didn't appreciate this 15 years ago when I was first starting to recruit people and build teams. I was very much of that ilk, and I know we might touch on that later with some of the questions, but it was, I want classically trained FMCG marketers, who have come through this sort of experience. And what I began to appreciate as I built our teams was, recruiting in my examples of recruiting people from an agency background or from a different sector background, learning agility, high EQ self-awareness and the ability to, demonstrate leadership capacities. They're the three things that I think really make a difference. And people can then stretch into different categories, different roles, new experiences.
Yeah, completely. And so in the same kind of vein of looking at your career, which how you created breadth, you worked in the UK with P&G, Coty, Diageo before moving back to Australia to join Pernod. Now, professionally, was it much of a transition in brand marketing terms, working in London to Australia?
I mean, those decisions were firstly lifestyle decisions. First and foremost, in coming back to Sydney, it was, I was entering a different stage of life, in terms of, family, wanting to have kids and stuff like that. That was first and foremost. But I think what's important to understand is, living in London when you're in your late 20s, early 30s is a great party. A long time ago, but a great, great city to be in. But what I would say is, London and New York, places like that, they're the epicenters of, the Western economy. So what you have are a lot of businesses that have their headquarters in London. And obviously the economy of the UK is bigger than the economy of Australia. So by nature, it's an epicenter of capability as well. So in the UK, I mean, really London, and I might upset some other cities, but London's really the epicenter of that. In Australia, Sydney is the epicenter of that, but you've also got sizable cities like Melbourne as well. So what I find with London was that there was because you've got a lot of global companies and a lot bigger domestic economy as well, is that you have a breadth of capability as an epicenter of capability in London. So again, from a marketing perspective in the industries that I worked, I found London was very much, at the time, not only was it challenging New York to be the finance capital of the world, but from a creativity viewpoint, it was the breadth of creativity and strategic thinking in the marketing advertising space was world class. And I think Sydney's obviously implanted or brought a lot of that capability over the last 10 years into Australia, which is great, but just simply by the nature and the sizes and the breadth of businesses that you have in, say, London and the UK, you get that it's just deeper in terms of those capabilities. But the adjustment back to Sydney, it was very much a lifestyle one, and and I think a lot of people that Sydney is very attractive to a lot of people who have got that experience from overseas to come back and bring that capability back to Sydney.
Yeah. Well, I'm here for a reason.
Exactly, a great example of that. So
it's a great place to be. But I think when we were able to travel more freely again, from I guess summing up what you're saying there, Derek, certainly from a career perspective, people listening to this conversation, perhaps in their more formative stages of career, a stint in London or New York or another world centre is only going to accelerate their learning.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think both from a personal perspective, and again, everyone's different, so I absolutely appreciate that. But from a personal experience, what you get obviously impacts every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And then from a professional perspective, the opportunities, and it can be hard work. It takes a bit of resilience to move overseas and meet new people. Sometimes, from a working visa perspective, it can be harder as well. So it does takes a bit of resilience, but I think if you make that step, the experience that you can gain can be immense.
Yeah, great. Another contrast, from traditional FMCG and P&G and Coty to Diageo and Pernod, is there much of a difference in terms of the marketing you do in traditional FMCG to liquor?
Look, there is. I think one of the things that you, again, drinks and liquor, and don't get. I really enjoyed my time in fragrances originally, and again, that's probably more lifestyle end of P&G and Coty versus the FMCG component. But what I would say is, you got to understand, liquor is a great industry, drinks, alcohol is a great industry, but there are unique aspects of it. So it's highly regulated in terms of obviously everything around alcohol. Secondly, you've got the different consumptions occasions. So you've obviously got the off-premise, but you've also got the on-premise. So from that perspective, it is, whereas FMCG, obviously you've got the whole very much product benefit, the functional nature. What I would say though is that even when you look at liquor, appreciate that there are different categories or sectors within liquor. So if you just go up the price point model, you've got, beer, wine, spirits, and almost wine is much closer to FMCG in terms of how you do marketing versus spirits, and beer as well. But the higher up you get, obviously sometimes you get less competition as well. But there's more lifestyle nature to spirits, and there's an aspect that you can see that through the advertising, the communications, and how the brands go to market. So there is that. It is different. But I think that's a very appealing part of why a lot of people want to move into the drink sector.
Oh, it's I've not worked in it, but I've interviewed a lot of people from it, and I've worked with a lot of clients. It's certainly a lot of fun, but it's a very good point. There are very different parts of the drink sector. It's not just one big kind of category. You're going to go from the very top end luxury marketing to more traditional FMCG, frequently purchased products in terms of beer.
Yeah, exactly. Beer and wine, very much. The turnover, obviously, as well as the fragmentation on shelf in terms of the repertoire of brands you can select from. Whereas spirits, especially at the high price point, is very lifestyle driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, most of your time in Diageo and Pernod was in global roles. And what is it specifically you enjoy with global marketing?
It's funny, I spent apart from when I first joined Pernod for the first year, the last 13 years in drinks, I've been in global roles, and people go, either you're great in global roles or you must really enjoy global roles. And to be honest, it wasn't necessarily by choice either. They were great roles that opened up, and your career develops as they do. But I think I really enjoy both global and local roles. I think local roles, when I first started my career, I was in fragrances, all local roles, and I call it, and I'm back in a local role now in Blackmores, which I really enjoy. You're kind of more at the coalface of the business in a local role. You're working with, obviously, the commercial teams. You're much closer to the daily sales numbers and all that type of stuff, and obviously working with the customers. But I think with the global roles, the best example I have is working on a brand like Jacob's Creek, which is got the broadest footprint in terms of geographical footprint of any Australian wine brand. It's in over 80 markets in the world. But it's my favorite aspect of working on a global role is dealing, understanding, operating with all the different markets in the world. And when you look at that from an alcohol perspective, and just take the top 9 or 10 markets with Jacobs Creek. Just think about the route to market and how we have to go about it. Forget about the different life stage of the brand. Forget about the different consumer as well. I mean, that creates a lot of complexity. But if you just think about the route to market and the commercial aspect of operating with those markets, Australia, you've got the duopoly of Coles and Woolies. The UK, you've got the 5 main grocers. The US, you've got the 3-tier system when it comes to alcohol distribution because of the historical component of prohibition. China's the most dynamic e-commerce market in the world, but you still have modern off-trade, traditional off-trade, on-premise. You've got India, which I won't even go to because that would take up the whole day. I was talking to you about the uniqueness of the fact that obviously alcohol is different state by state in terms of its some states are dry, other states are obviously just normal. You've got different tax regimes, state by state, including transportation through different states. Sweden and Canada both have government-owned alcohol retail. So in Sweden, Systembolaget owns every alcohol shop is Systembolaget. It's owned by the government. In Canada, it's done by province, so government provinces. So the Liquor Control Board of Ontario does Toronto. So it's pretty fascinating and amazing when you put it in that perspective and understand how you take a brand and build a brand and a portfolio and take it and execute it in different markets and the strategic thinking that has to go into that. That's really the nature of the global role. The strategic thinking, we're operating with different markets is really interesting. And the long-term vision to build that brand out is critical. So
it's really interesting hearing you talk about global roles there. Because I think a lot of people on the call or listening to the podcast are in their earlier career might not really understand the difference between domestic and global marketing. But it's they're fundamentally different roles. And for someone looking at their career path, I think being able to do both, I think again it just expands their skills, expands their perspectives. You're back in a domestic role now, a local role in Blackmores.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your role at Blackmores.
Yeah, look, I'm only 9 weeks in, so the knowledge base is still pretty low. But so I'm marketing director for Australia and New Zealand, but essentially it's New Zealand obviously have got their own sort of commercial team, but it's very much for Australia, that encompasses, it's actually Blackmores Group. So we've got 3 key brands now. Obviously Blackmores, the brand that we all know, Bioceuticals, which is very much a practitioner brand, and then Paw, which is our pet brand, so Pure Animal Wellbeing by Blackmores, all under the Blackmores Group umbrella. I basically head up the marketing team for Australia, working very closely with our commercial teams and our category teams with an Australian pure focus. And obviously we have a group global team that also obviously sit in Sydney that we work very closely with.
Okay. I've seen Paul advertise a heck of a lot in the last few weeks. Is that just me?
That's great. And that's a shout out to the Paw team. They've been getting a lot of complimentary, especially last week or two. We've just gone to market, obviously, with a campaign for Paw. But that's great that you say that. That's, the team there, Caitlin and Georgie and Bonnie, they've done a fantastic job. And that's great. They'll really appreciate another verbatim feedback. So that's great.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere. So it's highly noticeable, but great. In which role did you first become a people leader?
I was thinking about this the other day. It took me a while, but back at P&G when I became marketing operations manager, I had a team of 1 at that point, and I was very much in my late 20s, and it was all very new to me. That was the first time I had people leadership responsibilities.
Okay, and if you obviously a much more experienced individual now, but if you were to kind of manage the younger leader that you were back then, what advice could you give yourself?
I think just coming back to what we were discussing earlier, I think as you build out teams and as they get bigger, having that diversity of thinking is and a breadth of experience that people can bring different perspective, different experiences is critical. And it wasn't the fact that I didn't necessarily appreciate that back then. It's probably I just didn't have the experience. And I think when I first started building our teams, as they slightly got bigger, it was a case of, well, I wasn't necessarily cloning myself. It was more, the way I understood marketing capabilities were, I want classically trained FMCG marketers from leading companies that had this kind of track record. But what I began to appreciate, and a lot of the people I've brought into the team over the years have obviously remained close, are people from different backgrounds, people who came from agency, and they may not have the technically trained, process-driven background of working for a large FMCG company or something like that. But I think, again, people can demonstrate that learning agility. People demonstrate a passion for where they want to work, how they want to work. I think just creating a diverse team is critical. So, and that's probably the experience you don't have when you first start. People leadership.
Yeah, and flipping that round, what would the younger individual, if it's being managed by you today, how would they describe your leadership style now?
Oh, look, I hope I would describe myself like a lot of my, obviously I'm quite new at Blackmores, but a lot of my old team did it at Pernod Ricard, which, I'm about creating an environment that allows people to feel empowered. And in that way, as long as they're capable and talented and they have a sense of wanting accountability, then they really enjoy the environment to be able to deliver, but to also have fun. End of the day, you want people to get motivated to get out of bed in the morning and come to work, and having the right, obviously, environment of a high performing team where people can feel empowered and accountable, great, but people also want to have fun. People, and that's very much my style. So I love to, so he's obviously a great guy to work with, from a professional sense in terms of our objectives and what we're delivering and the success that we can celebrate. But also it's just great to get out of bed every day and go to work, and if you can motivate people to turn up because they enjoy the environment they work in and the fun that they can have, then that creates just the momentum for business success.
I think that's often missed, isn't it, in terms of leadership? We look to models, we look to our development paths, but actually having fun drives high engagement, and high engagement drives performance. So if you can actually create an environment where people just generally want to turn up because they enjoy it and having fun, then I think it goes a long way.
Absolutely. If you bring, you've got capable team, talented people, just that's the best. That's a great way of getting the best out of them.
Yeah, completely. Now, I always think when you're looking at someone's career, people generally try to make the best decisions they can in the moment. But and when it comes to career, that decision can be life changing. And one of my goals in this program is to help people think more about the career decisions they make. I think when it comes to jobs, people often focus on the job in front of them, as opposed to what will this job do to my career path? Is this going to expand my options going forward, or is it going to narrow them? And it's a really good lens to look at things through. But if you were to kind of look back at your careers, has there ever been a fork in the road that you kind of reflect on and think, I wonder if I'd taken that path if it had turned out differently?
Yeah, look, it's context. I'm a big context person, so I always say, what's the context? But for me, I think one of the overarching pieces of when it comes to career making decisions, particularly, and you obviously got hopefully a breadth of audience on here, but the most critical elements of decision making for me were, sort of mid-30s in that life stage, because when you make career decisions, it's in the context of the environment that's around you and the life choices that you have to make for your family, largely for family, and balancing that out. So that's critical, and everyone's different. But I look back and I think that there's critical moments, where sometimes you rationalize the decisions that you make and kind of do think, what if? I think what's been helpful for me has been really clear at stages of my career on where I want to get to and what I aspire to, and having what I call a life map, and doing life mapping, and we can chat about that. We'll chat about that in a sec. But it's that's important, because and life mapping is, what do you want to do professionally? What's important to you, financially, family wise, personally, etc. Where you want to live, all those type of things. Because then it creates that sort of integrated, joins the dots a little bit, and then it helps you make choices around career. the thing for me is that being very clear on where you get to also helps frames the pathways that can get you there and the pathways that might not take you there, and that's really important. What I would say is, there are in probably the last sort of 6 or 7 years, obviously Pernod Ricard, there's been opportunities to move overseas with the group, big large FMCG company, the wonderful opportunities that a company like that presents. But for either lifestyle reasons or career choice reasons, that wasn't the right pathway. I've made those decisions not to go there. I mean, you could argue, and again, a very honest person could argue maybe one of those two decisions probably may not have been the best career choice. But having said that, I was very comfortable with the choices that I made. There's probably only one role I sit there and go, well, what if?
Yeah.
And that's not at the time, that's simply not based on only in retrospect because of how that role has now progressed. But not at the time was it for that reason did I give it the what if came up. It's more in hindsight now. So,
and it's easy to do that in hindsight.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the life map then. So is that when you're approaching a career decision, is that where you go to? Is it in terms of actually trying to make that integrated decision?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I would say the choices that I made in 15 years ago, because I say my age, but it's hard to judge that. Like 15 years ago, when I first started doing life mapping, that first time I did that, it really helped because that 3 to 5 year life mapping, actually the career path I took followed that lineage. Now you can say that's a bit of luck as well, but that of okay, what are the industries I want? Where do I want to go to, and what are the industries are going to get me there? So I was very clear. For instance, so life mapping is for me. You draw a few boxes, and you put 4 or 5 boxes, and those 4 or 5 boxes are the things that are most important to you. Mm-hmm. So, family, where you want to live, what your financial situation, your professional situation, and maybe 1 or 2 other things that are important to you, and you see how they link. I give an example of that. When I lived in the UK for 8 years, but towards the end of that, I was very clear I wanted to get back to Australia at some point. So location, family was go home, get married, have kids. So those 2 were very big things. So from a professional sense, it was like, okay, well, where am I now? At the time I was working in fragrances, and I knew that the Australian fragrance industry is it's quite limited, and it's obviously driven through very global operations that just essentially have a sales function here. So I was clear that, if I wanted to broaden the appeal to Australian employees and organisations, I had to really try and make a move into food and drinks, because it's a big sector here in Australia. So that's why clearly in that career mapping, I went, okay, I need to identify opportunities in London to get that experience in London to then offer those opportunities when I go back to Australia. And that was all through life mapping, because I was very clear I want to be back in Sydney in the next 4 or 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. So hence the opportunity came up at Diageo. So I very much only looked at, food and drinks companies in the UK, made that next move. Diageo then opened up the door to then move into Pernod Ricard. When I got back, I would say I probably haven't done enough life mapping with kids and all that over the last 8 years. And that probably has, hasn't given me the clear vision over that time. But having, last 12 months last 8 months has given me a bit of time to think about that again, and it's really helped actually.
I like it. I think because it forces you to think longer term. About actually and setting longer term goals, which is great. And I think a lot of people do just focus on the moment and make a decision on that role. Is it the right title, the right salary? But actually, what you did there was, to think, well, actually, if I want to be back in Australia, I want to create more opportunities in terms of career longevity in Australia. I'm more likely to do that within food and beverage. So let me move into that space. And thinking about 2-3 roles down the line as opposed to just that role you're going for. So I think that's pretty smart. Question from Ian. Really interested to hear how you got your role at Blackmores. How did you make the connections?
Look, the first thing I'm really excited by the opportunity at Blackmores and where the ambition of where the company wants to get to. I first saw, look, it's a little bit complex. I first saw the role advertised a few months back, pre-COVID, and obviously when COVID hit, everything went a bit quiet. But I knew that, that opportunity. Again, I think what I would say is that, given this is a marketing director incubator, most marketing director roles aren't just roles that will cease to exist because of anything that might happen. Marketing director role are generally pretty critical to a business that they have to exist. So that opportunity, that especially the marketing director for the Australian business, that's a role that was always going to come up. So it was something that it was advertised directly. I knew sort of indirect connections, and again, this is the whole power of networking, which probably I didn't appreciate when you work at one company for 10 years. Your network is for me, is very insular and not external. And I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges of this year to help build that network. But I didn't know anyone directly at Blackmores, but obviously I knew of 3 or 4 people who knew of people at Blackmores, and obviously that was a way in. But also, it works both ways, right? Asking those people who are good connections of mine, hey, what are these what these people that at Blackmores, what they like, and they're all highly positive of them. New management team there, so that's really exciting. It's that power of networking.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I completely agree. I think often if you're just one applicant in a sea of applications to a job advert, yes, it's hard to get cut through.
Yes.
I think if you've got advocates on the inside, through your network, directly or indirectly, activate them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's not seen as a bad thing, it's seen very positively.
Yes.
And what goes around comes around, because one day you'll get a call as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I've already had a couple of those.
Yeah. So I'm generally want this program and the podcast to reach every corner of marketing in Australia, and if we can improve career decision making, we'll generally create more more happiness. People will be more there's too much frustration out there with careers who aren't going as well as they could, and the angst that comes with unfulfilled potential, which I'm trying to address with this program. For those, however, who do feel stuck, who kind of do feel that they're perhaps in a narrow pathway, what advice would you give them to actually get their career going again?
Look, the main one I would say is, and again, I bring it back to that life mapping, because I think the point of that life mapping is to be clearer on where you want to get to and what you aspire to. And it can be quite easy to go, hey, I aspire to this, very loosely, because of the title or because of whatever it might just sound good. But if you really sit down and map out, and again, everyone's different. I operate in some way. I like boxes and and bubble charts and all of that type of stuff. I get it, but if you sit down and map it out in whatever way works for you, and go, hey, actually, from a professional sense, what that means is this is what I aspire to. Because you can't aspire to everything, because it means that you probably sometimes get lost if you hit a roadblock or you hit that bottleneck that you speak of, Mike. But if you have that, then you start developing, okay, what are the pathways to get me there? And there might be 1, 2, or 3. Hopefully there's not that many, because again, you probably get a bit lost. But if you understand sort of what you're aspired to, and again, it doesn't have to be a singular thing, and the pathways to get you there, then I tend, one of the big things that I think people is that you start building that knowledge of what you aspire to. And when you build that knowledge of what you aspire to, you start becoming clearer around, I would say, your self-awareness, your EQ, really clear on sort of the capabilities and a network that you start to need to then get there. And I think that's really important. And I would also say, if you've kind of stuck as well, I'm a big believer in 360 feedback. Ask the people around you, your peers, your boss, your teams, for more sort of functional leadership feedback, because is there a reason why you're stuck as well? And what do you need to do differently to change that up as well?
Yeah. No, good advice. I think that feedback piece is critical, because I think frustration can internalize quite quickly, and perspectives you get from talking to other people can really help you understand, actually, there's perhaps other things I could do here. There's a reason why I'm stuck. And if I was to fix this or operate in a slightly different way, or perhaps extend my role into a different project, then I start to unlock opportunities, and kind of the frustration disappears, and the excitement comes back.
Yeah, and what I would say is, again, feedback. Everyone has different feedback, and you get a lot of feedback if you ask for it. It's what feedback you want to take on board and process that's really important. And it's feedback not just in the sake of traditional feedback as we might understand it in a performance review. I mean feedback also in from a, sometimes the helicopter view feedback will give you time, because most people sit in an organization, and and having been through a lot of sort of talent calibrations and performance reviews, that sometimes it's good to know. I'm a big believer, and we'll talk about this in, trust people with the truth. Yeah. And sometimes you have to ask for that to understand it, because people might not tell you. And then when you have that, you go, okay, this is where I am at my career. This is how people perceive me. And that's really important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust people with the truth. That's a good phrase. So one of the key discussion points throughout this program has been the importance of developing a really clear career narrative. And that kind of gives you, as we're talking about with a map, it gives you clarity to goals. It also makes a conversation you then have about your career more compelling. It's more powerful. And when you're having career conversations with a member of your team, and I guess you've got a brand new team right now, when does that conversation become really interesting, and when can it frustrate you?
Look, it's I love having conversations with people about their career, and hopefully my old team would say that. One of the things I did at Perno probably over the last couple of years was to always have someone in the team, not just direct reports, but someone in the team, and take them out for a coffee. Each month I would do that with one person, just to have a career chat, just to say, hey, check in, have a career chat, because I really enjoy that personally, and I hope they do as well. And the thing for me is, I think, and again, I haven't been great at this at large stages of my career as well. I'm the first person to say that, but the career, you have to manage your own career, and that's the critical piece. I think if you sit there and think that the organization or someone else is going to do that for you, and the first piece is to manage that. And that means making sure that you're chatting to people, you're chatting to trusted peers, advisors, and having that. So I wouldn't necessarily frustration. Frustration comes from people who clearly I see have wonderful capabilities, who do a fantastic job. And yes, through the normal talent reviews and calibration processes and succession plannings, there's always those opportunities that move up for people, but you can't guarantee anything in life. And I think I wouldn't say frustration, but I think the opportunity, it's one and the same thing, which is basically the opportunities for people to take on the responsibility of their own career. The frustration is when people don't. Yeah. And that's how it links together.
Yeah, it's a good point. And if you wait for it to happen, sometimes it does, right? Yeah. Sometimes you'll tap on the shoulder, and by me or by somebody else to say, hey, here's an opportunity. But those who are actively, have got clarity of their narrative, are able to kind of share that with other people, are engaging and networking with their career in mind, are more likely to have opportunities come their way. Because they're actually driving it, because HR won't do it for you.
Yeah.
Your line manager won't do it for you. It's up to you.
And look, any high performing organization, end of the day, and I say this, there are a lot of talented people out there. Yeah. Our goals as leaders and as organizations is bring on as many talented people as you can. So it can be quite competitive.
Yeah, but I think it is. I think it's often rare that the right role comes along at exactly the right time. I think often people wait for perfection, and that often doesn't happen. And it can be quite irksome sometimes if I speak to a senior marketer or a senior candidate, and they're saying, right, I'm now ready for this role. And my point is, well, you might be ready, but the world might not be ready for you. So you've got to be I think we're often more open-minded to opportunity and be open to a conversation about, you know, whether it's internal or external, even if it's not exactly at the right time for you. You know, from your perspective, how do you think that's a fair view? Should people be open-minded to conversations around opportunities?
They should, but I've always been be open to the conversation. But the clearer that you are on where you want to get to and what you aspire to, will help your decision-making process.
Yeah,
and I think that's the critical element. Is, you know, the world is full of opportunities, and always be open to that conversation. But how quickly how you make your decision, how quickly you close it down, how more questions you might ask to probe even further, because that's where a lot of that's almost I haven't seen, not just personally, but obviously a lot of friends and peers go through these questions and dilemmas and choices, is the questions that you ask to open up those opportunities. It's generally where you find the critical elements to help you make a really sound choice.
Yeah.
And without asking those questions, you get a lot of what ifs. Gee, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? But actually, a lot of people have gone, I've actually asked the questions and discovered more. That discovery, oh, actually, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to go and do this. So it's always be open to the conversation. It doesn't mean you can't close, just because you ask, just because you're open to it, doesn't mean then you have to take the responsibility of moving ahead with it. You can always say no as well. So
yeah, correct. But I think if you have this narrative in your mind, or the map that you use, if you've got structure to where you want to go, then you're able to actually ask those questions, because you've got clarity. Otherwise, you're just bouncing around.
Exactly.
So I think that comes back to that planning piece, a lot of it. When meeting people for roles yourself, and you know, as a marketing director a number of years, you'll have gone through a lot of team builds and looking at, you know, transitioning capability, those kind of things. So when going through a process and meeting either internal or external candidates, what impresses you about a candidate going through a process, and equally what are the watch-outs? What should people not do?
Yeah, look, it's the first point I'll make is everyone is different. So every interviewer is different, and every interviewee is different. I've learned that through experience, but also just chatting to people as well. And the first thing I would say is the key is building rapport with whoever's interviewing you, because at the end of the day, the person, I mean, virtually every process that someone goes through, obviously they'll be interviewed by the line manager at some point in that process. Yeah. Obviously there'll be HR or peers or whatever, but building the rapport with the person that you're going to work for in a very close capacity is important, because end of the day, you know, you hope as someone who's looking to bring someone into the team, if you've got 2 or 3 strong candidates, it's the one that you kind of sit there and go, actually, that's a person that I'm going to be able to engage with and have good conversations with and have fun and have a laugh and have that sense of rapport, because in the day, you know, you're working very closely with your team, and you spend a lot of time with these people. So building that rapport is critical. And I know it's not easy sometimes because people are different, and you've only got an hour generally, or 45 minutes to connect, and there's obviously a lot of functional questions and experience-led questions, but trying to build that rapport, I think is critical. And demonstrating, the main thing is demonstrating, for me, the important thing is demonstrating that learning agility, irrespective of experience. I mean, because you know, if you made it to interview stage, your CV's probably got some level of experience. It kind of goes, oh, this person's of interest. So it's really demonstrating that learning agility.
And is that, just to take that point of learning agility, is that being able to kind of showing a curiosity for doing more, being able to kind of say, yeah, I'm this role really excites me, but it's what else I can do?
Yeah, exactly. But it's also, I think, you know, the difference is not reading from your CV, you go, this is all the things I've done, yeah, because some, you know, you can touch on that and hopefully someone's read that, but it's demonstrating the detail under those points in your CV, say the 2 or 3 main achievements that match up to the role spec of the job and going, actually, these are the 2 or 3 examples that I can show that demonstrate my learning agility. Because sometimes people don't have the exact, I mean, some job specs say there's 15 things that hopefully a candidate can tick, and it's almost impossible. But to say, hey, listen, through my experience, even though specifically I might not match all 15 tick boxes, I can show you the learning. I can demonstrate the learning agility through these different experiences that can match up very well to that, to show that I can, fulfill all the key aspects of the role.
Great. I think your point on rapport is great as well. Too often it's missed.
Yeah,
people, I think, sometimes are nervous, or they're so focused on getting, their pitch across that they forget it's another person you meet. That person wants to like you. They're going to work with you. So spend some time figuring out what you've got in common, or having that conversation. But no, so easily missed. Before we move on to open questions, and feel free to use the chat facility, guys. I've got a bunch to get through here, which have been submitted through the registration process as well. But to finish up, Derek, as we do in every session, what 3 pieces of advice would you give an aspiring marketing director?
I would say first and foremost that life mapping piece will help you then build out. There's 2 elements to that. That life mapping piece, which will help build out the knowledge to where you aspire to, because life mapping will hopefully paint out what you aspire to, or the 1 or 2 things that you aspire to. And an example of that I would give is your ceiling, or when I say ceiling, not in your capabilities, but is where your career ambitions is that marketing director CMO, or is that MD CEO? Because if you understand that choice, it would actually help you build out which path, what are the pathways to get you. But obviously it'll just determine different pathways and options that you have. So I would always go, especially if you aspire to be a marketing director, especially if you're just that 1 step off, then you've probably got enough experience to go, hey, listen, let's do a bit of life mapping. Let's see what's really important to me. How does my career and where my professional purpose and intent is match up, and ambitions match up to that. And then build a knowledge base to navigate those pathways. I think the second piece of advice is, I read this somewhere, so it's not my quote, or it's not even an advice someone gave me, but I'm a big believer in trust people with the truth. Great leaders trust people with the truth, and that's a one piece of something I've read along the way, and I think that's really important to me. And other people may come across something else that's really important to them, but to always hold true to that, because the thing for me is, and where that comes from is the point around like who you are, be who you are, and that's important because some people, but for me, leading and supporting my team is just as important as managing stakeholders. That's one of the things I hold true to. So I'm trying to articulate this in a better way, is that leading and supporting my team is just as important to me as managing stakeholders. Because some people managing stakeholders is great, and they're not so great at leading and managing it. And the higher they get, they'll be found out because no one really enjoys working for them. And then other people kind of hit that bottleneck in their career because they're great at managing and leading their team, but they don't really manage their stakeholders that well. So the big piece of leading and supporting my team is always trusting great people and capable people with the truth. And then I think the last piece of advice is not necessarily advice. One of the reasons why I'm here having a chat to you, Mike, is for marketing directors is I believe there should be more marketers at the C-suite level. And that's one of the great things about Blackmores is that, the new management team that obviously have a strong marketing background, which is obviously very aspiring, but if we can have more marketers at C-suite and CEOs in MD level roles, I think that's a great thing. So it's more of it's not so much of an advice, but more of a, sort of a collective champion here on this saying, hey, listen, really let us collectively demonstrate what good, strong, strategic marketers who have a breadth of experience can really, why we can really lead businesses, particularly in today's day and age where I think marketers bring that more creative mindset, a more, not necessarily risk averse, but also great empathy. And I think they're great leadership skills that more CEOs and MDs are going to have and need over time.
You're here. Great. So let's get into some of the questions that have been supplied. So what necessary skills are you seeing the new generation of marketers need to have but don't yet?
It's an interesting quandary. I'm most people, most younger people coming through the younger workforce, the digital natives. So obviously you get a high index of people who bring that digital capability. But we're working on the flip side now is we want to, again, not just the Blackmores, but previous teams, upweight, every organization is probably saying this, upweight the digital capabilities of our marketing teams. But at the same time, what you discover is that a lot of really technical digital experts don't, and maybe this is my brand bias coming from that background, but don't necessarily have the brand building capabilities. So it's I think if you're a very technically gifted digital marketer, being a digital native, make sure you are building your brand building knowledge base along the way as well, because I think that is, that's gold for and really will open up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people have answered that question around digital, but you take the alternate perspective there.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. I think bringing on digital expertise is fantastic, but don't forget the branding side.
Yeah, great. It's an interesting one, and we haven't got a lot of time to go, but I love this. What are your thoughts on the importance of diversity of thought, and how do you encourage that?
Yeah, look, there's two aspects to that. Through experience, I realized that just having different perspectives is critical to aid decision making. Create better thinking, and which leads to better decision making and greater action when you go to implement that. And I think people with different experiences just learn different things along the way, and it really, it's quite simply just creates just better thought processes, better ideas, and I'm a big ideas person. So having diversity thinking just generates more ideas. Doesn't mean you take on all board. You diverge to converge at some point. But yeah, diversity thinking is critical. And one thing I would say to that, look, I'm one of my key purposes in life is, obviously my background as well, is not just more marketers in C-suite level, but I'm a big champion of more female and people of different ethnic backgrounds, obviously, in CEO, MD, C-suite level roles. I'm a big champion of that, and I think that diversity, again, diversity in that capacity. I don't really like the word diverse because I'm not diverse. I'm just normal like everyone else. But having a better balance of that different perspectives from that lens is also critical as well.
Yeah, great. Comes back to the point we talked about before. I think we often make very safe hiring decisions.
Yeah,
and actually that can limit diversity, and we and bias is a big issue. Unconscious and conscious bias. But I think to challenge it up in high performing teams, we have lots of different perspectives in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you appreciate that as the bigger your teams get as well.
Yeah, completely. Derek, that's great. Really interesting conversation. So thanks for your time this morning. Loved exploring your career journey and understanding that kind of that path that you've taken is different, and that's the whole point of this program, is that everyone's pathway is different. We're now at the end of the 2020 Incubator series, guys. So everybody, thanks for being part of it. Thanks to Derek, to Nathan Lowe, Vivian Zerlo, Megan Farquhar. And for those of you who are on the Sales Director Incubator too, we had a really strong group of sales leaders there as well. The podcast is available, Your Future in Sales and Marketing. I know a lot of people love to get the content through podcast. So if you're on the session today and you think, I missed previous sessions, or I'd love to see what the sales guys say, then jump on and you can access all those issues. The reality is, guys, I set up this program to deal with my kind of frustration. I'm conscious I was talking about my frustration, but that I do see too many people getting stuck mid-career, potential not quite realised. And I think a lot of that's to do with decision making and perhaps not being as informed as you could be. And the idea was to expose people to the variety of career paths that successful marketing directors have had, to show you that nobody just follows this perfectly linear pathway from brand manager to marketing director. People do it differently. They work in different companies, different categories, different countries, different sectors, often different role functions. And they don't just move forwards, they move sideways, diagonally. They do different steps to get to that point. But I think, broadly what we've seen is people have taken risks. They've been open to go things not going quite their way, but they've all developed what subconsciously or otherwise McKinsey's T career, as you have as well, Derek. So I think that's definitely played out well. And I did hope we'd get a dozen or so brand managers interested in the same in terms of national account managers. We've actually had over 1,000 people take part in these programs, so I'm really pleased that the impetus it's got. Now, the plan for 2021 is to bring you more career journeys. We're going to continue with the program. Lots of marketing directors have contacted me to be part of it. Also, a lot of CEOs and GMs have said they'd love to share their story as well. So I'm really hoping to bring you some different perspectives next year. Also, we're going to take on some big topics. So I think getting into some of the issues that are driving marketing today, I think will be very interesting. So we're going to be putting out a survey in the next, probably in early January. We might get out this side of Christmas, we'll see, with some thoughts and ideas on what we'll bring next year. We'd love your feedback on that as well, guys. So that's it. Thanks again, Derek.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Your time today, and thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great Christmas and a great 2021, guys. Thanks a lot.